All right, folks. Whoa. I had some levels way off there for a second. Let's try that again. All right, folks, he says calmly without blowing everybody's ears open. Welcome to Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball. This is a special live Q&A episode here on this Friday morning, kicking off a twofer on Friday. I had this plan, and this is just to buy a second for everybody to get their questions in at the front end. There's a bunch of questions that are in the chat room already, but we'll kind of let that pre-populate for a moment. If this show does well, this Friday morning live deal, this could be something that we make a recurring type of content, whatever you want to call it. Maybe not every Friday, but Friday morning live does kind of have a nice, fun ring to it. Just like everybody's going to have questions at the end of the week. And this would be an opportunity to pop them in a chat room and just yell at one another. If it fails, if it falls flat on his face, which is a distinct possibility, then I'll do something else. I'll do a different thing. I might even do a different thing today instead, or in addition to. In any event, if you're watching live, be that on Twitter, on YouTube, this is, again, one of those ones where, Q&A shows I'll probably put on as many platforms as possible, just so that more people have quick access, can get the questions in, whatever. We'll never sort of run out of them. Welcome, regardless, I guess. Please do like and subscribe. If you're watching on Twitter, and I'll mention this again, I get nothing. Which, I know, not really your top priority, but it's one of mine. So please, if you have a second, navigate over to a different way of taking it in. YouTube Live is a good one because, again, I actually get something for being on there. You can subscribe on YouTube, so that's important. That's relevant. You can like on YouTube. That pushes it up the board. Obviously, if you're listening after the fact, you guys know the drill. Just subscribe and drop a 5-star review. Let's go to the board. Might as well just get into things now. There were a couple of questions from last night that got wiped out by the YouTube chat room because I guess they sat for too long. But luckily, I've seen this happen before, so I copied and pasted them. So let's see here if I got this copy and paste properly. Billy Goat from last night wrote, Deep Dynasty Category Leagues. Who's your favorite of these three? Tristan Vukovic, AJ Griffin, or Duop Reith? Oh, boy. It's probably Griffin. I don't really have any desire to roster Duop Reith. I don't think there's any real upside for him. Vukovic got a bunch of playing time down the stretch last year, but that was when multiple centers were down for Washington. He is still there, and they actually got deeper at center in front of him. They brought in Alex Sarr, who, might be more of a power forward right now, but probably plays his way towards center over the course of his career. They brought in Jonas Valanciunas. They still have Rashawn Holmes and Marvin Bagley. So the path there to me feels extremely blocked. And then with Griffin, not that it's like a wide open thing. Crap. I guess he's in Houston now, right? He got moved in that deal. The path there is pretty freaking blocked, too. I don't know. There's just if you play hard enough, Ime Udoka will throw you in. So I guess I'd go Griffin. Brutal. He or Vukovic here between the two. I'll go Griffin. I don't know. That ends up being right, but that's the way I'm going. Dwayne Alviado, says, I love Roto as much as you do, and everybody knows Dano loves Roto. How deep league size would you actually start to punt? I have a couple of 16-teamers this year. I'm worried I'd be just mediocre on all cats if I try to be, and I think the rest of that was balance them all. So I actually kind of lean the other way. I don't think you feel mediocre, but everybody gets mediocre as you expand the league size. I think ultimately you're going to end up punting something whether you wanted to or not, but I don't think you have to do it on draft day because they're the difference, your doing all this reaching for punt guys and you're leaving dudes on the table. And it's so easy to spin in a deeper league, like one pick later. You know, your first round pick gives your team a huge identity, but you have no idea who you're going to get in the third. Like, is that going to be any kind of impact dude? So, you know, I guess I'm talking in circles a tiny bit here. Let's get to the point, Dan. I play in the 30 team, 30 deep, the classic one. And multiple times I've built extrememely competitive teams that I wasn't intending to punt something in. But then, the problem with a 30 deep team is that there's literally no one on the waiver wire. So it's not like you can change what you're doing partway through. You're just sort of locked in pretty much for the season, minus, very small handful of players that people didn't draft. And I mean, that draft goes what? I think it's 11 or 12 rounds, 30 teams. So we go real deep. 16 teamer, you're not going that deep. You're going like, 60% of that. Maybe an extra round, something along those lines. So, I guess the short answer here is you probably do end up giving up on something, but I don't know that you have to do it on draft night, if that makes sense. It's very easy, particularly in a roto league, to trade someone ranked higher for someone ranked lower if they fit your build better. And because on draft night, we have an idea of what we think everybody's going to do, but we don't really know for sure. It's better to just go take guys that you think are going to be really, really good. And then once we know what everybody's doing, then you can just go get the player you want in a trade by offering the quote unquote more valuable asset. Questions that then started coming in this morning. We can kind of loop back around now. Where did those begin? Do you have... Wait, is this moving around? Oh, one just popped up. Did that just pop up from yesterday in the afternoon? Just like rehashed itself? I have no idea how these are appearing. It's very confusing. If I'm out of order, I apologize. Matthew Rourke says, do you have Scotty Barnes inside the top 20 and why? He also writes, hi, by the way. I actually have Scotty Barnes basically right around that marker. I think where he finished last year is a damn good guess as to where he finishes this year. His role didn't shift all that much. There's this weird pushback that happened on social that was like, oh, his assists went way down when Emmanuel Quickly showed up. No, they didn't. In the limited sample size of those guys playing together, they actually went up, which I don't think, again, is necessarily something that's going to stick. I just mean, I don't think it's going to have a market impact. The things you worry about with Scotty Barnes are threes, so basically threes and scoring, and blocks. Is that 1.5 blocks a game? Is that really a number that sticks season over season? I'm willing to go out on a limb and say that it probably does. And so, for me, he's in a pretty good spot to replicate last year. So inside the top 20, I mean, maybe not, but like right on the edge of it. Jesus asks, is there a way for Michael Porter Jr. this season to end up a top 59 category player? There's a way. It's not likely. He was number 71 last year. The way that he moves inside the top 50, there's, I guess, 2 pathways to get there. One of those pathways is someone like Aaron Gordon, or honestly, I don't even want to speak it out loud, but like if Nikola Jokic missed any kind of amount of time, then Michael Porter Jr. would be forced to do a bunch more, whether he wanted to or not. The other way, and I don't think this is a thing that happens, but the other way that he climbs up towards the top 50 is field goal percent goes from 48 into the low 50s, which happened that one season. He shot 54% overall. He shot 44% from 3, 65% from 2. Those do appear to be, now looking at his 5 seasons of NBA action, more the anomaly, more the outlier than the norm. His other stuff isn't going to change much. He's not a high steals guy. He's not a high blocks guy. You're looking for about 1.2 combined there. Rebounds were solid last year, around 7. If he's playing over 30 minutes a game, he'll be probably near that mark somehow. He's a 40% three-point shooter, which is very good. You're getting threes from a guy who has a good field goal percent, and that's kind of what you're looking for. So odds are MPJ pretty much replicates what he did last year. But if there's this, if you get an anomalous bounce in field goal percent, that's how he would potentially climb a little up the board. Ronald asks, knowing that a Wemby team will practically win blocks every week, would you punt blocks or target second or third in blocks? So my answer to this question is kind of independent of this question, actually, if that makes any sense. It doesn't, so let me explain myself. I like punting blocks this year, and it has almost nothing to do with Wemby. Everybody's like, you might as well punt blocks because you're not going to beat Wemby's team in blocks in the playoffs. Okay, fine, but if blocks was the difference between you winning and not winning your championship, that means you were probably punting for things, and you shouldn't be doing that anyway. The razor's edge, way too thin. You mess up one thing. First of all, you're never going to get a bye week trying to win 5-4 every week during the regular season. And second of all, if you lose the guy that puts you over the hump in those things, you're done. There's no fail-safe at all. I happen to like punting blocks this year because I think there's really good low block center options, almost one per round this season in kind of a weird twist. First round, Jokic. Obviously, you got to get a top 2 pick if you're going to end up there. Second round, Domantas Sabonis is a terrific low block center. Third round, Karl-Anthony Towns, outstanding low blocks center. Fourth round, I would argue Jared Allen, who's only at 1.1. It's not high. It's not low. It's in the middle. Is a solid one. Jalen Duren, if you wanted to go that way, although I think he's maybe still getting a little overdrafted, even if you're punting blocks, but he goes in the mix there. Pascal Siakam is a punt blocks. I think he's center eligible this year. DeAndre Ayton right behind him, like a half round later. Then there's, I guess after DeAndre Ayton, there's like a 1.5 round gap, but then you've got Jonas Valanciunas in there. You've got Ivica Zubac coming up not too far after that. John Collins is in the mix. I mean, this is a year where you can do it, and these centers still, despite being not good at shot blocking, are still good at field goal percent. So you're good there. They tend to be better at free throw percent. And so I just like the way the board looks for punting blocks this season. Not having to compete with a Wemby team in the playoffs in that category is, I guess, like the cherry on top, but it's very much not the reason that I like the punt blocks angle in head-to-head. And I think I'm going to end up in a medium level blocks team in a lot of my roto leagues too, because I'm going to take a couple of these guys. Hartenstein is a guy I love. He's not a huge blocks dude, but he's not awful. And so if I end up with Jared Allen and Hartenstein and maybe some guards that block shots okay, like a Bradley Beal, I'll end up kind of mid-pack. Not going to be at the bottom, but I ain't going to be at the top either. So, the Wemby thing is there. It factors in. You're going to have a really tough time beating a Wemby team in blocks unless you are a punt free throw team and you stockpile bad free throw shooters and good shot blockers. But I just kind of like the fact that there are a bunch of centers that are good at both percentages that don't really block shots right now. Dem Birds, what's up, dude? Who has been your favorite 2 guys to pair while picking at the turn this year? So I haven't gotten into pairing all that much, and Josh and I talked about it on a show a couple days ago. Josh thinks, and I'm generally inclined to agree with him on this one, that the pairing idea is really more about pairings to avoid as opposed to pairings to target. First of all, it's kind of hard to know exactly who you're going to get on the turn. If Trae Young falls that far in a head-to-head league, a Trae Young something pairing makes a lot of sense in head-to-head. You guys know me. I tend to lean more towards the well-rounded team. So pairings that I've considered on the turn, Steph and James Harden, and I get my big men a little bit later. Steph and Kevin Durant, which helps a little bit more in the big man-y stuff, and then I'll maybe get another guard in the third round. KD and Harden, if you're going to kind of do the combinations and permutations of those 3 guys. I don't really want to go LaMelo Ball there. I think that's too early on Sabonis unless you are sort of, not want to say punting, but not really targeting the stuff that he's bad at. Sabonis makes a lot of sense there if you're, again, like a punt blocks punt threes. Sabonis is fine there. If you're not, then I think the combination of Steph, KD, and Harden are probably my favorites in that group. And then Donovan Mitchell would be sort of like the honorable mention next guy because of the per game appeal. And in this scenario, by the way, I'm assuming that like someone like a Tatum or an Embiid, those guys are not making it to me at 12. Obviously, if Embiid's there at 12, he becomes my first choice in that spot. In terms of the Trae Young thing, like the fact that he kind of shoehorns you into a particular type of build is not my favorite. Because I don't think Trae gets anywhere near the first round in per game value unless you're punting his 2 worst categories this year. Okay, maybe that's not fair. Maybe he gets near it, but I don't think he gets all the way there. I got to pick my words more carefully. Yellow Mamba, what's up, dude? How do you choose between team fit versus value or best player available? So first of all, use a draft tracker. Because it's easy for those of us that stare at this all day. We have a pretty good idea of like how things are generally looking in kind of like the, this guy's like a 3 in this category and, he's a 1 in this one. Like you can kind of balance those things out. I tend to gravitate away from team fit, which a lot of that I think is because of my propensity to play games cap roto. So like thing is, if you just stockpile enough really high ranked dudes, you're going to win. Like you can legitimately simplify fantasy sports to that. Unless you stockpile good dudes that are exclusively good at 4 categories, you're going to win. Like regardless of format, you're going to win. And if you then want to pivot into a more balanced build, you have all these really high-ranked players on your team, you should be able to make some very fair, I'm not saying trying to fleece anybody, literally just like trade equally ranked players with a team that needs the guy that you have and you need the guy that they have. So, I look at team fit if my team starts to get really, really, really bad at something. But before that, I'm pretty much just going for the guys I love. And I often get myself into trouble when I'm just like, oh no, team fit. And then I take a guy that I really didn't want because I'm like, oh, well, my team was a little weak on rebound. So I'm just going to take this rebounder here. And then I leave some awesome dude on the table that finishes 40 slots ahead. And I get it. Like sometimes, and this is part of why I think a lot of analysts have started to move towards this kind of the tiering system. I like to call them buckets, whatever, like guys in a similar bucket. But there is a difference between a guy ranked 50 and a guy ranked 90. Even if the guy ranked 90 might be a better fit for your team in that moment, get the guy ranked 50 and you can trade him for the guy ranked 65 who does the same stuff as the guy ranked 90 but just does it better. So there's like a lot of pathways forward. So I lean towards, the quote unquote best player available, but it's a way of referring to a player that maybe isn't the best way, but it does get the point across, I think. I'm hunting the dude I want. Are you more open to taking an injury-prone player in a daily head-to-head league with a weekly games cap? Absolutely. Absolutely. The games cap makes injury-prone guys way more valuable. Way more. It doesn't fix the tanking situation, because guys that miss games at the end of your head-to-head season are obviously much worse than guys that miss games in the middle. But, someone like a Jimmy Butler who's just out, he just misses 2 weeks every 2 months. Like, that guy in a games cap, you take the good and then you just deal with the bad, but you're not taking zeros that whole time. You're moving someone else in, and someone else can't just beat you by 4 games played because Butler was hurt. So absolutely. I haven't looked at the chat room in a while. These are the questions that came in before we started, and it looks like there are a lot. There's a lot left. Okay, so this is working. I think we can safely say you guys are enjoying the Friday morning live show, right? Yeah, cool. Okay, so I need a favor, because a lot of you are watching now. I don't know what the breakdown is between Twitter and YouTube, but many of you are watching. It's like 200 or 300. If you are watching on Twitter, please, at the very least, like the post where you're seeing this. That's important. And if you are feeling the spirit, go to our YouTube page. The links are all over the place. It's in the show description. It's in my pinned tweet, all that stuff. And watch over there instead, because that's actually more helpful for us. Subscribe to one of these things. Obviously, if you're everywhere else, you guys know the drill at this point. Like, rate, subscribe, and then, of course, follow me on social media at Dan Besbris, and follow at Old Man Squad. This is a good one for folks that are watching on Twitter. You should be able to just go follow at Old Man Squad. It's right there. You're already on the correct app, and that one will follow you back. Old Man Squad will turn around and follow you, so you'll get a follower out of the ordeal, and then you're going to get updates whenever shows post from me or our other hosts. What's up, Nils? Would you prefer a Halliburton punt rebounds or punt points build? Probably punt points. Maybe that's just because I think I'm very good at punting points. Matt says, any advice for drafting in a category league versus a points league? Yeah. Focus on percentages a little bit. People ignore them, and that means that you can win them. Things that other people devalue makes it easier for us to win them. For a while, that was both percentages, steals, and blocks. Blocks have become more valued, less devalued with Wemby and other guys that are in, the 1.5 to 3 block range. Suddenly people are more interested in these, and you've got these bad free throw shooting leapers going in the 110 to 125 range on draft night. So blocks are actually maybe less easy to win now. The percentages still remain unbelievably easy to win if you focus on them in any meaningful way. And then I think I would argue that turnovers have suddenly become very easy to win if you just don't completely abandon them. Take those free points, man. What's up, Johnny? Can you please infuse more 8-cat love into the analysis? Yes and no. I'm trying my best. So basically what I like to do, because the vast majority of fantasy players use Yahoo. That's the big one. Second largest is ESPN, but that platform's terrible. And then Fantrax is just as much as they have the best for commissioner tools, they're a distant third in how many people actually use that service. So Yahoo, their default settings are 9-cat for a lot of this stuff. So my default setting, the Dan bot, is default set to 9 categories. So what I try to do is, as we're going through these players, I try to make mention of certain guys that see a really big bump in 8-cat, which is typically guys that are ranked outside the top 50 that are bad turnover guys. Because the guys ranked at the top of the board are all bad turnover guys. So turning turnovers on and off, 8-cat, 9-cat, it doesn't actually change the top of the board all that much. It really doesn't. Someone like a Kawhi is going to take a hit. Someone like an Anthony Davis is going to take a hit. But most of these guys at the top were between, 2.3 and 4 turnovers a game. And so they shuffle around a little bit, but it's not a huge change. When you get down into the 60s, and there's a guy with 2.5 turnovers a game, like an Alperen Şengün, for instance, he was 61 in 9-cat last year, but he jumps a long way in 8-cat because the guys around him aren't that high turnovers. He jumps around and a half. You look at the guys near the top of the board, you turn turnovers off, Kevin Durant goes from 10 to 9 or something like that. These guys don't move. They barely move. So that's the way I try to deal with the 8 versus 9-cat. And to me, it's the way that probably is the simplest and makes sense. Andy says, who's your favorite old man this year? I mean, it's probably Tobias Harris. I don't care how high he goes. He's still... I guess we'll see. Certain guys are moving around. Suddenly Terry Rozier's going really late. But no one's passing my Tobias love. Dan, would you rather have Julius Randle or Pascal Siakam? I'd rather go Siakam because he had a down free throw shooting year. If that comes back just on its own, then he moves up the board a round and a half without having to do anything else. Julius Randle is bad in both percentages and turnovers. I think there's a chance that Siakam is at least like neutral in a couple of those. So I'd rather have Pascal. Matthew Lloyd, what's up, bud? Any points league steals that you've been seeing people sleep on? No, you don't usually do much points league content, but it's hard to gauge people's sentiments when mocks are based on categories. Not a ton, Matthew, and I don't do, like you said, a lot of points league stuff. We had Jacob Dunn on the show last week? Question mark. And we'll have Robin Marks coming up on an episode, hopefully in the next week and a half, something like that as well. And we'll do a little bit more digging on the points league side. So sit tight. It's coming, but it's going to be sort of sequestered into individual episodes. Mr. Jason, who has a picture of the Munsters. I thought we were going to get like a Jason Voorhees thing. 6-cat roto auction draft. 6-cat. So no percentages, no turnovers. I can keep 3 guys. This is a very confusing question. 3 guards, 3 forwards, 2 centers, and a utility spot. Lord have mercy. Jokic at $82, Cade at $39, Spide at $29, Barrett at $8, Jalen Johnson at $6, Hendricks at $1, Clowney at $1. I think it's, for me, I think it might be Jokic, Donovan Mitchell, and Jalen Johnson. I know that uses up a decent amount of your budget. But man, Jalen Johnson for $6 is a guaranteed yes, because he's going to be worth way more than $6 this year. Donovan Mitchell at 29 feels really low for a guy who could be a first rounder. Yeah, I guess Jokic does lose a bit of value when you turn off the percentages, but he's still Jokic. So I think I'm sticking with my gut here. Jokic, Donovan Mitchell, Jalen Johnson. I think you'll be able to get some other $1 guys at the end of your draft that'll do more than Hendricks and Clowney. Who are my sleepers in Yahoo 9-cat head-to-head? Aldrich, I've done 2 shows on that. I mean, I'll throw a couple rapid-fire names at you, but if you really want to know, you should go check out those shows. If we're looking at after 100, Zubats, Bogdanovich, Anunoby, Conley, Colin Sexton, Horford, Amen Thompson is one of my favorites going in after 120. Gary Trent Jr. is pretty safe. KCP's not a sleeper, but he's a safe dude. I love Gafford at 142, Dyson Daniels at 154, PJ Washington at 193. If you're in a games cap format, Jonathan Isaac at 190 is also very interesting. Onyeka Okongwu back at 110, I think is pretty good there. And then if you're in a punt free throw position, you've got a lot of really good choices there, like Kessler, Lively, Trace Jackson Davis, and I think I'm forgetting Mitchell Robinson is another one if you're punting free throws. So those are the guys I like after 100. Most of them were in chronological order, not preference. Hopefully that helps. But yeah, go check out the other show. Subscribe and then go check that out. That should help take care of that. Have you guys subscribed yet and hit the like button on the video yet? I hope you have. Neil says, I really think Wemby gets drafted too early, considering you can find blocks later in the draft. In my opinion, Luka should be drafted ahead of him. Oh, that's a hot take. I like a good hot take in the morning. Yes and no. So, I half agree with this statement. So Wemby was insane. The last 2 months last year, he was number 2. But like Nils points out, a lot of that was tied up in his 4.5 blocks per game. We should also assume that Wemby gets a little better. Free throw, maybe 77. Does that tick up to 79 or 80? Field goal from 46. Maybe that goes to 47. I don't know that I'd expect it to go up too much because he still takes a lot of kind of ill-advised goofball shots. The scoring will probably go up from 23. The rebounds might stay at 12 because he's just like, it's a lot of minutes to play over the whole season. Assists 5. I don't know. Luka over Wemby? I think I'd still go Wemby. I know that Luka gives you probably, it's a firmer base and it gives you more options. So I'll give you that. I think Luka gives you more options than Wemby does in terms of team build, because scoring, threes, rebounds, assists, even steals are all good for Luka to great, somewhere between good and great. His free throw was better. Field goal was better. Both percentages were actually better than Wemby. If you draft Luka, you're probably not going to be attacking blocks. If you draft Wemby, you don't really take any category fully off the board. Like, he's not so bad in any category that you're just like, yeah, I don't think we're going to do this one anymore. With Luka, you probably, and I know you could get a big man shortly, but you probably start to think about giving up on one. I mean, I get it. You could argue this one both ways. That's why I like Jokic first, honestly, because he's Luka on fantasy steroids. He's all the stuff Luka does. Not as many threes, obviously, but more boards. The assists are about the same. Steals, blocks, percentages all higher. Turnovers lower. Yeah, Luka's going to score more, and I guess everybody loves the extra 5 points in head-to-head. But in any event, I still think I'd take Wemby ahead of Luka because we don't know the top. We don't know how high he can go. But I get it. I understand your point. Aldrich, who are the players to be avoided this season? You know what? That's a good question. We haven't done a show on the guys to avoid. We've talked about them on sort of the round-by-round breakdown shows, but Kyrie Irving is a guy I'm avoiding where he's at right now. If he falls past 20, I would take him. I think Jalen Brunson is going about a round too early. I think DeJounte Murray is going a round too early. I think Paolo's going 2 rounds too early. I think Franz is going 2 rounds too early. Brandon Ingram is 2 rounds too early. Nurk, if you're not punting free throws, is going way too early. Same story for Clint Capella. I want basically nothing to do with those dudes. Frankly, I kind of want nothing to do with those dudes overall, because if you are punting free throws, we just went through a list of guys going after 110 that you can get at a bargain basement price. I don't want Jeremy Grant anywhere inside the top 120. I don't want Jalen Green inside the top 140. I still don't trust RJ Barrett, although, again, punt free throw, that's sort of a different discussion. And those are kind of the guys that I'm avoiding. And then basically everybody else that I probably wouldn't draft is likely because they are more sort of team buildy. Like, I'm probably not going to take Giannis in the first round. I don't generally punt free throw, although it is getting easier these days with the way players are made up. But Trae Young is actually a really good example of someone I probably don't end up with on almost any of my fantasy teams, because I just think that the polarizing fantasy stat set that he puts up it's freaking overwhelming. Like, he forces you to do a number of things. He's very, very good at assists. He's going to be very good at scoring and threes this year and free throws. And so, great, you get this 4 strong category start, but he's absolutely abysmal in rebounding, blocks, field goal percent, and turnovers. And you have to work so hard to bring those back without blowing up the things he's good at. And that's why it's hard for him to get anywhere near the first round outside of like very specific team builds. But I don't want to put him on this list, because if you're trying to build a super guard heavy team and you're like, I'm going to go Trae Young and then I'm going to salvage rebounds. Okay. Like, have at it. It's just not for me. How far behind am I on questions? Many. I'm many behind. We're about a half an hour deep on this thing. I'd like to not let this go an hour. That's a painfully long episode. So what I'm going to do here now is, for about the next 7 or 8 minutes, I'll continue to answer questions at this kind of slightly slower, deeper speed. And then once we hit 40 minutes, we're going to fly. Mina Kral or Manacral, or I don't know if it's one name or two. Will you be releasing groupings again like last year? Don't tell anyone. I actually didn't do groupings last year. I did them the year before, but the answer is yes. And I've actually begun to work on them. They're far from done. I think I've only filled in like the first 20 players. So I got like another 100. I'll probably go about $150 deep on this. I'm not going to put the guys in this board that I have no interest in drafting. However, and I can do this while we're talking, I have, many of you know this already, some of you don't. I have a G sheet, a Google sheet, totally free. I'm not charging anybody for this thing, where I've been tracking Yahoo's pre-rank board and Yahoo's ADPs. Basically, anytime the pre-rank board updates, I update it. And once a week, I'll update the ADPs. Well, I just added a third page, a third tab to that. That's the buckets, my tiers. So, if you want to see where I'm slotting in the first handful of people, first of all, that link is in the show description on YouTube, and it'll be in the show description on all traditional pod channels. The only place it's not is, not obvious, is on Twitter. So I'm going to pop it in the chat room here, and I'll make sure to tweet it as well. But if you look at the chat room right now when I'm talking about this particular question, I just put the link up there for you guys to go to the Google Sheet, and you can kind of start. You can see the beginning of me working on my buckets. James Harden versus Scotty Barnes. Who do you like? I'll go Harden. Marco, what's up, buddy? Why is Banchero getting drafted inside the top 40? So, rose-colored lenses combined with points leagues is the only possible explanation I can have for this one. So last year, Paolo in 9-cat was number 160. If you punted turnovers alone, he moved up to number 98. If you punt turnovers and free throws, he moves to number 57. Now we're getting close. And if you punt turnovers, free throws, and field goal, he's number 42. Ta-da! Bum-bum, sound effect. That is why he was effectively this rank last year in points leagues. So that's why he's getting drafted there. But 8-cat, 9-cat, he's got no business in this particular area. And so don't do it. Do you see Josh Giddey being top 30 to 40 or 50 in 9-cat punting turnovers? All right, so here's my Josh Giddey analysis for those that haven't heard it yet. Josh Giddey was number 113 the last season that he actually did stuff in OKC. So not this last one. I don't use this last one. He was terrible. They didn't play him. If you punted turnovers that year, he was number 72. He has seemingly gotten better at free throw shooting. Let's just call him league average. So if you look back at 22-23, that season, and you punt turnovers and free throws, by the way, I have bad news for you. Punting free throws didn't really change his rank at all. He stayed in the early 70s. So what you're hoping for with Giddey is a little bit more stuff than he did in OKC, because I don't see the percentages getting much better than the combination of high 40s in field goal, maybe approaching 50, and league average in free throw. Let's call it league average. So like right around 80. Turnovers are going to be on the high side. He's going to score, he's going to board, he's going to assist, but he's not going to do a whole lot else. An extra minute or two, he played 31 minutes a game that year with OKC, might get him an extra point, half a rebound, half an assist, something like that. That's enough to move him from the early 70s to the 60s. And so, again, if you're punting turnovers, 8-cat, effectively, I think Josh Giddey probably finishes in the 60s this year, maybe gets into the 50s. I don't think he breaks that even in 8-cat. And 9-cat, I don't think he gets, frankly, all that close to it. But, again, he does get you assists, which is a category that's hard to find as you move through drafts. So I'm probably not going to end up with Giddey in many spots. This is one of the players that I won't list as a bust, because if he finishes at number 109-cat and he's a high turnover guy, then people pretty much got what they wanted to. Now, the thing is, he's getting drafted in the 70s, so you kind of price him out. Like, there's absolutely no reason for me to draft him in the 70s in 9-category leagues where I like to be competitive in turnovers. 8-cat, that spot totally makes sense. In fact, there might even be a little bit of value on him in 8-cat. Can you rank your top 1 to 16 players? So those will be in the buckets that we just talked about. That question about my groupings. I don't put them in order. I think it's insane, and it's a great way for analysts to invite criticism, because you're not going to get them right. But basically, I have the first 16 players separated into about 6 mini tiers, and you guys will get to see those shortly. Just, not yet. Andy, will you be doing live tweets during the regular season regarding who's a must-add? These are extremely helpful for people who can't watch every game. Andy, I'm going to be tweeting like you would not believe this year. It's going to be insane. The reason being, now that I have my own network, I'm not selling anything. Which, again, this is not a knock on anybody that does. I don't want anyone to interpret that way. I just made basically a plan with myself that for at least one full calendar year, I would do everything for free and just max it out. And basically see how much Old Man Squad Network and its Twitter and my own Twitter and all that stuff, see how much that can grow over 1 year. And if it works, and if it goes great, I'll do it again. So yes, tons of tweets, tons of shows. I'm going to be going insane basically from now until at least Christmas, and then still like mini level insane even after that. So yeah, tons of tweets this year. By the way, maybe that was a time for me to say follow at Dan Besbris on Twitter if you're not already doing it. Some of you think you are, but you're not. So just triple check. Where do you think Freddie VanVleet should be picked? He often falls in drafts, but I'm concerned with his health. Don't be. Played 70 some odd games last year. It was great. I'll take him anywhere after basically like pick 27. And luckily, he's falling closer to 40. I'm going to end up with a ton of Freddie this year. Dan, I wanted to ask if you think Brandon Podziemski might be a solid sleeper around his ADP, assuming he gets his free throw percent up and gets a huge minute or usage increase. His minutes will be up. I don't know that his usage is going to go up that much. I just don't think. So here's my thing about Podziemski. First of all, he's a better reality player than he is a fantasy one. He just doesn't strike me as a dude who wants to be shooting a ton. I don't think that's who he is. He played 29 minutes a game during the second half last year, and he only took 8.5 shots. And I know Clay's out, but they brought in Melton and Hield, who's very much not afraid to shoot. And Kuminga's going to shoot more, and Wiggins is going to take some of that stuff. I just don't believe that Podziemski wants to be an offensive weapon, which is fine. Like, I'm okay, so that's not the right way to put it. I'm sure everybody wants to be an offensive weapon. I just don't think that he feels his greatest strength is that. He's a hustle guy, but he's poor percentages, and he's not going to score much, and he actually doesn't get as many steals or blocks as it looks like he should, given his hustle. So I just think he's going to have a tough time putting up good 9-cat numbers. Oh, he's going to play because he's good for them on the reality side, but fantasy side, I'm still not seeing it. If there is a second installment this season, will you be joining Industry Pickup? Yep, JK, that's the plan. I talked to Josh about it on the side. They had the Industry Pickup draft, which was a speed draft, by the way. It wasn't a slow draft. It happened to be during my kids' Little League practice, which is Tuesday nights for me. So basically, if it ain't on Tuesday night, I'm in it. I really want to be in it, too, because I want to play a head-to-head games cap league, but I didn't want to, like, you can set a queue on draft night, but it doesn't always do the trick because, like, sometimes weird things happen and you need to shore up a particular category. So, yeah, I mean, the hope is to be in there because I really want to play a games cap head-to-head league and kind of basically learn it. Kev says, Dan, are we not worried about Harden requesting a trade? I don't think so. I think he's happy. We should also remember that James Harden is home. You know, he's a Californian. Like, this is home. I think even, by the way, also, I don't think the Clippers are going to suck this year. Like, I think they're going to be fine. There are a lot of teams in the West that are all clustered in that same area. And Harden's issues were generally not about his team sucking. It was really more about, like, was a coach using him properly? Did he feel valued by an organization? The Clippers are going to value him. They have to. They have no choice at this point. I think he likes being in LA. He's from Los Angeles. Like, I think this is where an old aging Harden is probably going to be happy to just sort of cool. Hey, Dan, love your work all the way from Australia. What's up, bud? I guess I love you right back. Hey, F. Scott Foster, welcome back, dude. Can you rank these guys? JJJ, Cat, Bam, Şengün, Turner, Mobley, Jalen Johnson. 9-cat head-to-head. I will go. I'm going to go Jalen Johnson. Give me the upside. I'm assuming I'm not punting anything. So I'll go Jalen Johnson, Cat, Bam, JJJ, Mobley, Şengün, Turner. Okay. That was hard. I don't know how many questions there are. Oh, crap. There's a lot. Okay, we're going to lightning round mode. Boop, 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 boop. Sorry, Edwin, go. Your question is the first one in lightning mode. We're going to be done in the next 5 minutes. I guarantee it. I have the first pick. Heard you mention that in your short that it'd be good to punt blocks this year. If my first pick is Wemby, what are the categories I should punt? Nothing. You don't have to punt anything with Wemby. Find out who's coming back to you on the second and third round. Take the best guys you can find, and then decide if you want to do anything there. You can win them all. There's nothing that Wemby isn't doing or nothing that Wemby can't do. You're probably likely going to end up punting field goal would be the most likely in that instance because he's a big man who gets all the big man categories except field goal percent. So that's the one you're most likely to, but you don't have to do it. Who are the rookies to pick this season? Nobody. I'll pick up Donovan Clingan halfway through the year when DeAndre Ayton and Robert Williams aren't playing anymore. And then Alex Sarr maybe gets useful by partway through the year. Do you feel like taking Kawhi late second round or early third round in Roto is worth it? Yes. Jimmy fourth round? Sure. GamesCap Roto, have at it. Do I think LaMelo could still be worth a mid-high second round pick for the ceiling? No. Late second round is where I would take LaMelo. Who's your first pick, Jokic or Wemby? Angelo, you didn't watch my show? It's Jokic. I just think he gives you so many more avenues. That's the part that I like with Jokic. It's not like Wemby's amazing. I just think Jokic makes it really easy to draft a team. Jimmy says, 16-teamer. I plan to take Jokic number 1. Who's a good pairing? Doesn't matter. That's a beauty. And I know this sounds like a cop-out answer, but legitimately doesn't matter. You can take anyone with Jokic. The only thing I probably wouldn't do is target blocks or threes with your next pick. If this is head-to-head, which Jimmy says it is, you got like 7 great categories you can lean into. Are you taking Scotty Barnes at pick 20? Sure, why not? Don't you think we're not considering the rest days in Wemby's ranking? What rest days? He played 71 games last year, guys. He was great. If he misses 10 games, I mean, that's fine. Most of these guys, Luka's going to miss 10 games. I would almost bet my life on it. After a finals run, Shea, maybe he doesn't miss 10 games. Jokic, I don't know, 10-ish. He only missed 3 last year. That's probably too few. Most of these guys are going to miss 10 games, though. AD's going to miss 10 games, I would think. Who else is going there? Donovan Mitchell, Kyrie, Steph, KD. I don't think most of these guys are going to miss 10. I wouldn't worry about it too much. Would you take Kawhi or LaMelo Ball with AD or Embiid as your first round? Oh, God. Jason, your team might not survive October. No, I would not. Where would you rank Anthony Edwards on a Roto setup? Okay, so per game, I don't think Anthony Edwards changes all that much. I think he goes from late 30s to early 30s this year. Maybe late 20s at the absolute best. If you include the fact that he's extremely durable, he's probably a mid-second rounder by totals, basically. But per game, he's a third rounder for me. Jason, which punt would you take in 8-cat 10-teamer? Last year I punted field goal percent, but since blocks are difficult to pick up this year as a punt blocks draft, I like punt blocks. That's one I'm leaning into. Thank you, Dan. I think the free season is a genius marketing strategy. Well, we'll see. Here's the thing. If you guys like it, the way to show you like it is to help spread the word about it, which I realize can be counterintuitive because your league mates probably see the things you're spreading the word about. But if word doesn't spread fast enough and my wife's like, you idiot. But here's the thing, though. I'll be very transparent with you guys. If the free everything model doesn't work, the backup plan is a Patreon where I'm charging $1. Okay? So not even like a, you're not going to get more, really. It's almost like a donation bin, effectively. So that's the backup plan, which, again, not the worst thing in the world. Most of us have $1. But I'd rather not, if at all possible. We'll see how it goes. Who's the best player in 9-cat? I mean, if you're going strictly on the rank board, I think there's a very reasonable chance that Wemby ends up as the number 1 guy. But because so much of his value is tied up in blocks, I still like Jokic. James Harden or LaMelo Ball, asks Pierce. James Harden for me. Hey, Dan, should I cook chicken or steak tonight for dinner? Oh, too legit. That's got to be meat, man. Steak. Meat. Too legit has the meats. Yellow Mamba says, nice hat, Dan. It's a Visalia Rawhide hat. Or Visalia Moo. No, what are they? It's the Rawhide. Is Dyson Daniels, Gabriel, worth a shot in 12-teamers? Yeah, why not? I would go last round because we don't really know what he'll be there. But there was that magical run, and I guess we'll take a second here because this I think is going to be the last question we cover on today's show. It's the end of the chat room right now. I know something's going to pop up before I quit, but I'm going to leave this as done. If you go to Dyson Daniels' basketball reference page and look at this game by game from this past season, you can see that one little chunk of time where I think CJ McCollum was down. Where was that exactly? There was like 2 weeks in there. Was that the one was it in January? There was one really early on. Was that it? In November? Maybe that was the one. I thought it was later in the season, but it might have been November. So November 8th through November 27th, Dyson Daniels was a starter. November 8th, to November 27th, he's a starter. So now what you can do is you navigate over to the Basketball Monster rank page from last year, and you set the timeline of November 8th to November 27th. Switch it over to the Pelicans, and you can see exactly what he did during that span. Dyson Daniels was at 8.5 points, 5.7 rebounds, 4.5 assists, 1.9 steals, 37.5% shooting from the field, 0.8 threes, and basically no free throws, but he did shoot 85% at the foul line. So the question becomes, is that good enough? Because that was starter level Dyson Daniels. And that might be what you're kind of looking for from him, with the hope, of course, that 37.5% shooting was an outlier on the low side. He's not a good shooter, but he was at 44.5% for the season last year. So you can, I think, assume he'll be better than 37.5, which means if he's up near 2 steals a game, he gets you inside the top 100. So I like it. Get yourself some Dyson Daniels. And you're welcome, my Pop-Tart pals from the Menace Pod Men show. Thanks for the lunchtime show. Yeah, man, this is my got home from dropping the kids off, finished doing dishes that were still dirty from last night, cleaned up the living room, checked Twitter, replied, checked YouTube comments, replied, and then started a show. And it feels like, based on the number of questions that came in, it feels like this was generally considered something people liked. So we'll do it again. Congratulations. Your participation has guaranteed us another live show. Maybe we'll do a Friday morning again, and in a perfect universe, we'll get a guest on. He and I can kind of, or she and I, they and I can trade off taking questions, something like that. So I don't have to just BBD for 50 minutes in a row. Went a little bit longer than I wanted to on this one. We'll try to keep these to 40 to 45 in the future, but I mean, whatever. Like, what's an extra 7-8 minutes for you guys? Again, if you like these live shows, if you like the fact that I'm doing everything for free, please like, rate, subscribe. That stuff is the thing that's going to allow me to keep doing this. And Yvonne on the way out says, I don't know if you answered this before, but what's the story behind the draft board behind my back? Well, the year was 2020. We were all huddled up inside, wondering if we'd ever be able to share another human's warm embrace again. And every year, you guys know, I do an industry roto mock about a month before the season starts. The bubble championship had just ended. We only had about a month and a half before the season started. And so I thought, what better way to bring everybody together than to do the mock draft, the industry mock, live on air. I got as many faces as I could on it. I think StreamYard only allowed us to put 6 people on anyway. And one of them was, and, you know, if I turn the camera, let's see if I can turn the camera so you guys can see this. I'm going to not knock a bunch of stuff off my desk. There you go. See that right over in the corner there? It says Live Industry Mock Draft 2020, hosted by Dan Besbris. That's me. Draft boards made by FJ Fantasy Sports, which, Yvonne, you reminded me, I got to reach out to those FJ guys and see if they want to do something again. But anyway, they were one of the feeds, one of the video boxes, and they were slamming stickers up on the board as the industry pros were making picks. We weren't in the same room with them, but I thought this was kind of like a fun way to make it feel like we were all in the same room. And anyway, when it all ended, I emailed them and I was like, can I have that board? Because prior to that, I don't know if anybody remembers this from the old days, I just had my bed behind me here. I literally had no backdrop. None. I had a hoop ball banner that I hung over the window beyond the bed. So there was a logo in the video at least, but it was just like a bed. Anyway, the bedroom has gotten 9,000 times more disgusting since we had our second kid, and now he's 4.5. And so we had to cover it all up. Great question. Follow on Twitter at Dan Besbris, at Old Man Squad. Like, rate, subscribe. We'll be back with you later on today. My Perfect Team. Everybody loves that show. That's a crowd pleaser. Those ones are really fun to make. I'll tell you that. I don't know how helpful they are for drafting you guys, but I don't know. I enjoyed myself. Thanks for the participation, everyone. This was really fun. I will catch you guys on the flip side.